Without further ado then, I'll get started with starting off this debate. So hello everyone, my name is Reese. I'll be the chair for this round. I use he, him pronouns, but I prefer if you refer to the panel as a whole. Congratulations to all of the debaters for making this far. I look forward to an excellent debate. Could I have all of my panelists introduce themselves, starting on the left and going to the right?
Hi, I'm Lee. I use he and all pronouns, but I prefer the panel as a whole.
Claire, she, her. Emily, good luck.
Oh, Eamon, good luck, have fun. Anson, he, him, pronouns, you like.
George, he, him. For time signals, I think Claire will give time signals. For everyone else in this room, remember the acoustics in this room are not fantastic. They are designed for a single lecturer talking, so whispers might be a little bit audible, so do your best to sort of be relatively quiet, both debaters and spectators as well. If there are no issues then, I'll call upon the Prime Minister to open up this round of debate.
As much as we like to believe that we know about AI, AI is still a foreign entity that we think is very foreign to us, and even more investment into it will never let us understand what this entity truly entails. On side government, we think the far preferable outcome for all of humanity in the long term is actually to not develop AI. We believe that in a world with less dependence on AI, we can develop other solutions that actually allow us to rely on humans ourselves to keep our autonomy and not have our systems collapse on us. It is on that basis we're very proud to stand on OG. I'm going to provide two arguments in my speech. Firstly, about existential risk, and secondly, about mass inequality. And then Sarah's speech shall probably expand on the mass implications this has on society and why this is incredibly important in the round. The first thing I want to do is that for the model, I think this is pretty intuitive. You're just taking a pill, we're ignoring everything about AI, but other things like computer science will probably still exist. First argument on an existential risk. I want to first point out why this is something that is impossible to prevent. First of all, note that the speed of AI improves so fast that it's almost incredibly hard to regulate. This is preemption for all of op bench to explain why regulation is something that's implausible to happen. And there's a couple of reasons why this is true. So for instance, the large tech companies that develop AI often have financial profits, so there's never going to be an organic reason to stop developing AI in a status quo. And more importantly, while it is true that we can have investigators look into AI to try to regulate it, their efforts are, one, diluted due to lobbying efforts. Think about Elon Musk in the Trump administration, the level of influence they have over him. And while that is an incredibly fringe example, we can tell that large tech companies have huge amounts of lobbying power. But second one is the fact that governments often just have way less money to invest into this. Tech companies have one objective, whereas governments have a wide variety of objectives where AI isn't the only sole focus they can focus on. The second thing I want to point out here is that AI can self-improve. And while we don't know when that happens, when that actually occurs, it is almost impossible for us to stop it because it spirals so fast and improvement continuously happens. Note that already with spontaneously responding AI like ChatGPT, they have read files from literally every part of the internet that ever existed, from books to actual files to videos, even video and audio recordings have been documented into it. So it means that when self-improvement actually occurs, it's almost impossible for us to go into that model and actually understand what is going on. The third, and I want to point out why existential risk is actually plausible. And we have two reasons why this is true. So the first reason is that the AI is not something that is inherently evil, but it is something that it's difficult for humans to control. If you tell AI to help solve climate change, the fastest and most optimized solution is literally to kill off all humans. And while I'm not saying that is the most likely scenario to happen, it is the fact that AI has a very straightforward path that tells itself to prioritize and maximize its objective. And yes, parameters can be coded in, but notably, there are literally millions of parameters you need to code in, and at one point, if it self-improves every single second, it becomes a little difficult for humans to keep up. But the second reason why I think this is also pretty intuitive is the fact that AI literally causes huge amounts of environmental damage every single freaking second. So it's the fact that, for instance, it takes large amounts of water to even run AI, and we already know that climate change is the largest amount of existential risk that we are posed right after AI. So we literally know that while this is a climate change argument and not very cool, I'm not even joking that it's actually incredibly dangerous for us. So I want to know why this is important. Because while I think the status quo can be improved, the status quo is actually not that bad. And notably, while we use AI in some aspects of our life, we actually do not think it's necessary for many things we need. And we think in a comparative where there's less reliance on AI, we can develop future other more innovative solutions that do not rely on AI. And note this is a trade-off in the round. So when you have tech companies that know they can develop on focusing on AI, they're less likely to spend the effort developing other sorts of solutions for the world. So in a world where perhaps Meta isn't focused on developing AI, it might be focused on developing other sorts of tech models that help individuals without having to rely on artificial intelligence. And these are solutions that we can better access on our side of a house. The second argument I want to talk about then is mass inequality. The first thing here is that we think job loss is incredibly likely. And here's the nuance here, because I know this is a math that's repeated over and over again. It's not only blue-collar jobs that exist, like as AI self-improves. We think even though new jobs can be created, there's a mismatch between the types and the number of jobs lost. So yes, a few more jobs are open up to maintain AI, but those are often high-level jobs that require some level of education. But more importantly, you just need one person to manage, like perhaps, or a couple people to manage AI, where previously you might have needed 10 workers. So numbers don't match up. But no, this isn't just about blue-collar jobs. It's literally going to jobs that people otherwise creatively enjoy, like play script writing or art with 3D animation. Know that these are the sorts of jobs people say humans can better access when AI takes all the dangerous blue-collar jobs. But AI is literally expanding into those areas because it is improving that fast. The second I want to point out here is that you know who benefits from society relying on vast amounts of AI? The tech companies. And we think that gives them a level of wealth that is literally inhumane, as billionaires actually increase their wealth, as entire societies depend on it. So it means, for instance, trading models depend on AI, water systems depend on AI, justice systems are filed by AI, and that level of dependency creates inhumane levels of wealth that we think shouldn't exist. The third thing I want to recognize is that we think mass inequality, we think AI simply creates a lack of respect for human labor and human creativity. In a world where we otherwise could be focusing on human labor and the products of human creativity, our beauty our minds can create, we're now relying on codes, hard codes, where we think is far more cruel. We think under our side of house, we're focusing on the future long-term things, where the status quo may be imperfect, but it simply isn't that bad for us to risk all sorts of harms towards other individuals. We're very proud to stand on OG.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for their remarks. Call upon the leader of the opposition to continue this debate. Hear, hear.
Oh, very briefly. Thanks to Orcom, thanks to my coaches, and thanks everyone, because I'm just like very grateful to be here. Yeah. Okay. Wait, sorry, let me just organize this order. Time starts in 3, 2, 1. Proposition can escape the harms of AI, but they cannot escape the existential crises that we face already in the status quo. We say that we ought to employ future generations with the capability to solve these existential crises. A few things in the speech. First, a little bit of framing, then 2 arguments. First, on why we get innovation. Secondly, why the alternative of regulation is actually quite likely. First, then, framing. I want to note by saying that this happens right now, right? Taking this pill and erasing this knowledge happens right now. It isn't a retrospective policy. That is, the tech that has already been created through AI, these cities and civilizations that we've already built on artificial intelligence, that knowledge doesn't get erased from the past. Those technologies just crumble in the status quo, right? Secondly, we will prove why the alternative, that is regulation, is quite likely in our second argument. First, then, let's talk about innovation. And notably, I want to start by saying that existing technologies rely on AI far more than OG would like to claim. And note that they also do concede this dependence on AI in their second argument. This looks like DeepMind being used for cancer detection in many healthcare sectors. It looks like industrial agriculture firms being able to use AI to monitor crop patterns and to be able to build up far more food and be able to grow far more crops, right? It looks like social media algorithms that are overwhelmingly use AI. It looks like air traffic control using AI to prevent airplanes from hitting each other even when pilots are like asleep at their jobs. All of this means is that civilization and cities right now depend on the technologies to run in the background. And so when this knowledge is erased, when this pill is taken, when these technologies crumble, there are 2 implications. One is just that people's quality of life dips, not only in the convenience of our lives, but also in many, many crucial things for living. It looks like agricultural management stopping working, and it prevents us from feeding billions of people who are already on this earth, right? It looks like people losing their jobs en masse that are built off of not necessarily AI being directly involved in their sector. It's built off of those technologies running in the background so that they can get to work, right? But secondly, that we are able to uniquely solve current problems and new ones that are popping up at an increasingly large speed on both sides of the house, right? Which is that these existential crises, such as climate change, such as nuclear threats, still exist on proposition. We have already caused those irreparable harms. And so in many cases on our side of the house, AI is overwhelmingly employed to solve these issues. It looks like AI being used to detect hurricanes and earthquakes before they hit as a form of addressing climate change, for example. It looks like new technologies being used to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere. And so it means that future technology and new innovations make our lives better. It looks like life-saving technology, R&D into new drugs that are like exempt from antibiotic resistance, for example. The claim here is very simply that modern problems that we have already created outpace the speed of old innovation. That if we took away AI, we would not be able to innovate fast enough to solve these existing crises. And so I want to impact this on urgency, that even if different solutions that they very ambiguously claim to you get developed later on their side of the house, current issues are incredibly urgent. People are already dying from climate change. These are existential crises. I also want to weigh this on future people, that we hold an obligation to those in the future. We ought to employ them with the ability to solve the issues that we ourselves have already created and already burdened them with. Second argument on why retribution is actually possible, and here I'll engage very massively with OG, right? We think if we get all of these benefits from AI that they already concede to you, we can avoid the harms that they tell you about with regulation. How? And we think this looks like having AI have human preferences, for example, so that we don't kill everyone in the pursuit of solving climate change. That we have labor protections for people, that we have ethics agencies in the government that regulate AI. Why is this likely? First is that people are naturally skeptical of new technologies, that techno-pessimism is very, very prevalent, that people are terrified of AI coming and taking their jobs, that people are terrified of a malevolent AI saying we should kill all people, that people fight aggressively to hold onto their jobs, that unions fight aggressively for this. And so it means that the political will for pressuring governments to regulate this exists already, and it will only grow into the long term. But secondly, that replacement is not so dramatic as Gov makes it sound. The jobs are complex and general, that people are still necessary in many, many careers. That corporations will lose huge amounts of money if they replace people immediately. What this means is that it means that the development of AI is likely to be quite controlled and slow. Why is this good? It's that regulation to be implemented has the time to actually develop, right? It means that we have time for new jobs to pop up. It means that we have time for things like the welfare state to grow, to implement things like UBI. And we want to weigh this, right? On their side, in their best case, in the worst case, climate change kills us all. On our side, in their best case, AI becomes extremely evil. I want to weigh this on certainty. AI can be fixed, its evil is uncertain. On our side of the house, climate change is a certain harm, right? Existing solutions have already failed. We're very, very proud to oppose.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for the remarks. Call on the Deputy Prime Minister to continue this debate here.
At the very top of my speech, I want to tell you what existential risk actually is. That AI at its core is a program of efficiency. That if you ask it to make 1 million paper clips, the best way to do so is to cut down on every other sector in society. That if you ask AI to improve and get rid of climate change, the best and most efficient way is to kill off all humans. And the problem is when AI reaches a point where it can self-improve, where it gains autonomy, where it is able to improve itself and there's no possible way to stop it, we think that is a world where the very way and very life of human existence is endangered. On that basis, we are so proud to propose. I'm going to do 3 things in this speech. Firstly, brief rebuttal, then rebuilding. Lastly, a third argument on human creativity and innovation. Let's first talk about rebuttal. The O case is very simple. AI can do all of these wonderful potential theoretical things, and we lose out on it. Several responses here. Firstly, the status quo simply isn't that bad, because what are things that were developed without AI? Vaccines, many treatments for diseases, infrastructure, that you could have plumbing, electrical systems, planes, forms of transportation, telecommunications. All of these things still very much exist in a world without AI, and can probably guarantee a reasonable standard of living for every single person. So what is the margin then, I ask, in opposition's world? Perhaps some people's lives are extended if you could get a cancer-saving treatment. Perhaps that some people's lives are slightly richer. But ultimately, we explain to you why perhaps the actual lives of billions of people far into human civilization far outweigh if my very healthy grandmother can live perhaps another 5 years or another 10 years. And I think that was the actual margin of change in this debate. But the second thing I want to ask is AI actually going to be able to achieve all of the good types of innovation they talk about? That AI is often trained on biased data sets. That look at the Microsoft chat box, AI chat box, within 24 hours, it literally became a neo-Nazi online. And the implication of this is that because AI learns off of human experiences, human emotions, and human history, it arrives at very bad conclusions, that it oftentimes does arrive at biased conclusions, that like an Amazon AI hiring tool found that it was preferable to hire white guys named Jeff. So the implication then is all of the mechanisms they had to prove were just skipped over. Now let's talk about rebuilding. The only response they give is to challenge whether or not there is a way to prevent existential risk in opposition's world. But the very first problem they ignore is a lack of capacity. That the issue is we don't know how to regulate AI. One, because the speed at which it is already improving is so fast that regulators cannot keep up. Like our regulators in the US, for instance, don't even understand what TikTok does. How do you want them to like decide when AGI or the singularity point is going to happen? But notably, it is impossible to determine when the singularity point is going to happen, when AI becomes self-improving. And at that point, AI is going to improve at such a fast rate that it is impossible to meaningfully stop it in the first place. But secondly, we told you that there was a lack of incentive. They simply tell you, wait, people are techno-pessimistic, borrowing from the past motion. But the more realistic interpretation was that people weren't. If people thought that AI could do all of these wonderful things like, solve cancer, whatever, they're far more short-termist. Why would they care immediately about billions of people upon billions of people in the future when their lives are more proximate? So that because of the long-term effects of AI, there was no incentive. But more relevantly, who are the people that were in charge of producing this AI? These were all of your elites in the world. These were the tech companies that literally are the wealthiest entities on our planet. These are the rich billionaires who are the ones who profit off of AI by being shareholders, by investing. These are people that fundamentally make profit and have a stake in letting AI develop, which is why it's impossible for perhaps average advocacy groups to meaningfully stalk them. Why do we think existential risk is actually so bad when it actually happens? Firstly, notably, the more OA wants to say that all of these great things will happen because of AI, society will become more aligned, the more they can see that when existential risk does happen, society probably collapses. If you rely on AI for your justice system, if you rely on AI for healthcare, if you rely on AI for all of these things, that makes existential risk so much worse when we think AI does ultimately happen. And also, Alinna gave you a claim on climate change here that was never actually engaged with. But a second argument then was on mass social inequality. And I think the job loss here cannot be understated, which is the types of job loss that occurs in a way that, A, there are very few replacements, very few new jobs that actually occur, but the types of jobs, there's a skill mismatch, that it is your skilled Silicon Valley engineers that probably get it, and not the blue-collar workers that you lay off in the hundreds of millions. But also, we told you who profits from AI. It were the elite companies, it was the tech companies, and ultimately, when you give them unfathomable amounts of wealth, when you want every aspect of society to be improved by AI, you create a world that is fundamentally like dystopic, that is run by elites, where these people have billions upon billions of more dollars and all the power in the world. Third argument then on human creativity and innovation. Why do we think ultimately AI will replace human art and creativity? That it is often faster and cheaper than human art. That to some extent, regardless of meaning, the quality can actually be better. And think about not just paintings, but culture, architecture, etc. Why then does human creativity matter? It matters firstly in the process of fulfillment. That is a meaningful way of expression. That is often used for advocacy, for social justice reform. It demonstrates shared anger and outrage. But also, secondly, we told you that this was a fundamental part of the human experience. That human emotion and their stories were shared through their work and can't actually be replicated by cold machinery and cold hard code that OA wants. So you fundamentally lose the value of human innovation, human creativity, human experience, but you also leave billions upon billions in the future to die, and we think that is a world that is unacceptable. So proud to propose.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for the remarks. Call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue this debate here.
Is this loud and clear?
Yes.
Oh, great. Before I start, I'll just like to say, I think 2 years ago, Hart House 2023. Today's, oh yes, 2025, right? Yeah, I got 5 points or 4 points. That was great. But I'm here now. So, yeah. Thanks to everyone here, my friends who are gaming at a pub right now. Oh, they're there. Hello, Anthony, Jerry, Andy, Feiyang, everyone in this room. Yes! All right. Orcom, I swear I'm not writing notes right now, but thank you guys as well for the judging. This was a very scary tournament, but it's also very fun. I think I'm slightly masochist because the stress is low-key interesting for me. So, yeah. Please raise your hands for POI, please. Wait, let me just look over my notes. I forgot to do that. Oh, did I not have to do that? Oh, thanks, Sophie. Like, truly, you're a great partner. Thanks a lot. Oh yeah, I love women. Okay. Wait, okay. 3, 2, 1. Let me just first talk about why AI won't actually take over the world. There are a few reasons. Firstly, AI, AGI is still very far. And as of right now, a lot of best AI is literally just complex pattern recognition. So proposition has to prove why AGI is not just going to be developed, but also why it's likely to be developed. Second of all, I just want to preempt what CJ might say about sentience. Why would sentience not actually be built into AI? First of all, as shown by every gov mechanism, there's already mass hysteria around this kind of stuff. But second of all, it is very hard to program sentience into AI as well. It is hard to program a human mind and emotions into AI. But third of all, I think people don't want to program sentience in AI, because if there's no sentience, you can abuse AI for infinite amount of times for infinite utility. It is unclear why that would happen. But finally, I want to talk about, can you actually program rationales? No, thank you. I'll probably take one from CG if I can. Can programs actually be programmed into AI? So rationales for what you want to do. I'm gonna start with the illustration. I once asked GPT to help me cheat on a test, and it said no. You can do this kind of stuff. You can say, hey, this is not ethical. You shouldn't do this kind of stuff. In the future, more advancements can be made, and you can also program further advancements into this kind of stuff. Opposition says, well, tech companies program these kind of AI in very bad ways, and therefore they use it in a very bad way. The problem is that they never actually prove why when it's actually going to be used and put into practice in a bad way as well. So for example, you can program it to like not kill for utility. You can say, hey, we're not going to give this AI mainframe control over the fucking American military because it's going to launch all the missiles in the world. It's unclear why the government's actually do that if existential risk does exist and they fully know it as well. Next thing I want to talk about is why AI will actually be implemented in not bad ways. First of all, proposition says AI will kill everyone because of utility it is maximizing. Firstly, I want to talk about why a utility actually won't be the priority here. And the idea is just literally every gov, right? It's that there's hysteria and there's this techno-pessimism and there's fear about AI as well. That means likely to be programmed about, saving human lives, but not at the cost of human lives as well. But next question, why will AI actually have power on that kind of stuff in the very first place? Nukes, weapon. Why will climate change result in AI using all the weapons in the world to nuke the world and prey actually goes back into health? There's no reason from proposition as to why they actually give control over AI. But also, people understand a lot of things that require humans as well. So the example of like legal systems. Yes, maybe like AI can make more more objective decisions, but also the legal system requires like morals as well. For example, committing crimes on necessity is not the same as committing crimes just because you want to do it as well. That's why we have leeway in the legal system, and we're not going to implement AI. Let's talk about saving lives then. Before that, POI from closing government. I don't really want to talk about OG because they're OG. They just talked like 2 minutes ago, man. Let's talk about saving lives. Maybe I'll take one later from OG. First of all, proposition says the AI is super powerful in their first speech and in their second speech, and it leads to very fast innovation. So for example, it can replicate on itself, and therefore it's very powerful in a moment after this part. And then in Sarah, they say, well, AI sucks. It's just so bad. You can't have any sort of solution, right? They literally said that in this speech. Like, we can't have medical advancement that save lives because AI sucks. This is a very massive contradiction in the case. If AI cannot, do kind of things, like it cannot be advanced, then their case also does not work in terms of existential risk as well. But notably, their own characterization in how AI improves is wrong as well. They say you can learn from different data sets and you can replicate itself. And then they say it's feeding the biased data sets. Even if that happens and Nazis AI will also exist, there are things like improvements of data sets, right? We learn to feed better data sets that are more objective as well. Closing government.
Yeah, can you give an example of a current basic technology that depends on AI?
Cancer detection, agriculture, you can detect which field is should be watered, right? Like there are so many things. Weather detection, you can see patterns, right? It's injecting patterns of the past in which humans cannot see that kind of stuff fast enough. It's what AI is able to detect immediately. If you don't have someone working 24/7, AI does that for you. Next part, I want to weigh. We're not willing to risk the idea of not saving lives just for a chance of proposition. They say, well, look, we have better solutions. Let's say that can exist. The problem is that right now we have the fastest possible solution as conceded by opening government as well. Why must we risk that risk? Well, literally with risking the risk, right? Why do we have to take that risk of lives being lost right now if we can have solution be made tomorrow? It is unclear. But also uncertainty. It is certain people will die on either side of the house. It is best to minimize it as quick as possible. Why is AI the best solution in this round? First of all, because it's smarter than humans. And opening government says, well, look, humans can find solutions. The problem is that AI is quite literally just a smarter, more objective human as well. It's programmed on how humans and data sets that they have. So if this is the case and they say humans are good, well, AI is just a better human in this way. But secondly, new solutions are hard. And I'm going to use opening government's mechanism here. They say, you're a lobbyist against these kind of people. Well, guess what? Nuclear energy is lobbied by the oil companies. Pharma lobbies against Alzheimer's and cancer medication as well. All these things could have been put out 20 years ago, but there's none out right now. But also, just it's very, very hard to actually find those kind of stuff in the very first place. There were no reasons from opening government for why, having money or having time leads to actually finding the best solution. But even if you have time, we'd rather not waste that time on lives dying. Finally, on jobs, they say blue and creative jobs can be taken. First of all, there's slow replacement as proven by Sophie. But secondly, even if creative jobs are taken, some jobs just require humans, right? Look at self-checkout. Even if self-checkout is more efficient, there are problems with self-checkout that needs humans there as well. But also, people want to interact with cashiers because they are human, even if companies have to pay them more. So AI isn't just an all-encompassing tool to be used in every way. It is a way to be used to save lives. Very happy to oppose.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for the remarks. Make sure that you do your best to start your speech as quickly as possible, just so we don't run until 9 o'clock at night, because I would like to get home. Also, be aware when you're speaking into the mic, you don't have to speak directly into the mic. You can stand back a little bit. Okay, without further ado, call upon the member of government to open up the back half of the speech.
We have faith in humanity. We have faith that given a few decades, we can develop better technology and better data sets. We have faith that given our own space, without another non-human voice speaking into our ears, we are going to create beautiful things that will improve our planet. This pill and this motion is not about a reset. This pill is about a delay, a much needed delay that gives us a future where we can live side by side with AI and not under it. That is why we are proud to oppose. I'm gonna do a few things, just one thing. My extension on why we return to embrace AI much stronger in our world, and why on those circumstances that deals with all of the content you hear from opposition, co-ops the proposition case and wins us the round single-handedly. Let's talk about why we return to AI stronger. To start, we think it's very likely that AI will make a return after a few decades. If we look at the timeline right now, it took us 40 to 50 years to fully develop AI from a point in time without any knowledge of it existing beforehand. So we return to that point essentially only in the form of our technology. What does that essentially mean? We think the opposition teams already do a very good job of explaining why AI is so important and why there will always be incentives for humanity to return to AI, because there will always be incentives for better technology, for more efficiency, and there will always be laziness in humanity for us wanting something else to do stuff for us. We think what's much more likely to occur is that AI is going to return after this delay, and it's going to return when we are better prepared for it. Why? Why do we return stronger? Look at our technology that is not AI related right now. Look at how fast we have advanced. Look at how fast we have developed computers and technology. We think that this rate will continue, in fact, for all non-AI technologies. Things like green technology, things like carbon capture, things like the strength of processing chips. They'll make AI much more efficient and much more able to handle because we have better forms of energy output. So on aggregate, with our technology will become better to build to equip AI. Note that all of these technological advances that I have pointed out are not actually related to AI. They are not related in any form to machine learning or neural networks. And we think only under our world, we're given the time to develop them to a point where we can live side by side with AI. But let's look at the specific AI problems that occur that actually result in a lot of the problems that opposition has and why we actually fix them. And this is very important because number one, I want to talk about energy processing. Front have loved talking about climate change. So let's chip in a CG. Note that AI takes a huge amount of energy to even run. Every prompt takes hundreds upon hundreds of kilowatts, or whatever the biggest amount of electricity is, and it takes a huge amount of energy that has to come from somewhere. And with our given current energy processes, it comes from our Earth. It comes from natural resources that are not replaceable and are finite. We think that AI usage right now outpaces the ability we have to create energy in the first place, and that clearly worsens climate change under their side. So why does this get better on ours? I will tell you about nuclear fission. It is the potential to change and massively increase all of our energy capabilities, and it creates exponentially more energy than fusion. Look at how we have advanced. In 10 years, we advanced from creating it for 1/1,000,000th of a second to 30 minutes. Think about what can happen in 40 and 50 years. And why is this exclusive? Because we don't have 50 years to idle around with an exponentially growing AI and as climate change gets worse. And fission isn't even usable right now. We need time to handle the energy output. And it's not just fission. You look at the technology we have that can advance far, far greater later. Fission is just one example. In 50 years, we might come up with another kind of technology that can easily create this thing, or fusion, whatever. What's the impact? We push back climate change. Imagine the self-exponentially growing AI coupled with terrible energy sources that hurt the planet. That's only going to further the existential threat that front half seems obsessed with. Second, we're going to talk about better data sets. When AI does return, it works with better and larger data sets. There's more knowledge on the internet. And so as the course of history curves towards justice, we think the knowledge and the data set on it is going to be much more equitable. That, for example, AI is not going to only be relying on the past decades-old information that has incredible biases in it, often like medical examinations that only focused on the male body and not on the female anatomy, and that meant that AI was not able to be properly equipped to do with these things. This bias disappears under our world. We think AI is much more equitable and much more responsible in our side. Thirdly, we're going to tell you about democratization. No, thank you. We think AI is so expensive right now, and that is a reason why it's only companies and corporations that can raise millions and billions of dollars that only create that AI in the first place. We think under our world, when we have better and better forms of energy, we have more accessible forms of technology, it is much more likely that AI will be democratized, that people will fight for open source AI instead of the black boxes that prevent any kind of accountability from occurring. These are only benefits that can happen when we are given 40 and 50 years to develop at the rate that humanity has. And finally, on CPU power, we look at the processing chips we have right now. It's increased exponentially. We think it's going to get even better. And so AI not only will be more energy efficient, but it will also give results far, far faster for people, especially when you are putting in very complex prompts. Only under our world do we give the much needed delay for humanity to prosper in the long term. And that is why we are proud to stand on proposition.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for their remarks. Call upon the member of opposition to continue this debate for the opposition side. Here.
Okay, no thanking speech, because I think the people that I'm thankful for probably know that already. So my time to say first word. Wait, sorry. There's two things I want to quickly say to the CG case. Firstly, go look at motion clarifications. It was clarified by the CA that this AI technology will not return, or at least not in the foreseeable future. And the implication of this is that even if it returns, it probably returns after we have died by climate change already. But the second thing I want to note is that AI is going to return in a far worse and more pernicious manner. We live in the first generation of techno-pessimism. We lived in the era of the nuclear bomb and social media. That's why we're techno-pessimistic. If you look at historically, we have never been so techno-pessimistic in our entire history of humanity. By Jin's own rhetorics, we love technology and its potential. If we were to come back in the future, we are likely to not be as pessimistic and not regulate it as much, opening them up to the OG content. So unless they want a knife, they're all out of this round. So here's how CO is going to take this round. We're going to fill in the blanks in the O case to explain why this is so detrimental in the short term. We're going to explain why you're going to get complete societal collapse on government side of the house. At the very start then, I want to illustrate 4 things very quickly on what AI actually does in the status quo, because I don't think it's very clear to CG by their POI. Firstly, it's financial markets. So this looks like high-frequency trading. This looks like fraud detection. This looks like risk analysis. Secondly, it's economic productivity. This looks like supply chain logistics, inventory management, airline scheduling. Thirdly, it's just the fact that tech and AI industries are incredibly large part of our economies. OpenAI is literally the fastest growing company in the world. NVIDIA is literally the most valuable company in the world as a result of training artificial intelligence and machine learning models. Fourthly, it helps developing countries a lot in immense manners. So it's automated farming, it's banking systems that we have access to now. It's things like job matching platforms. It's things like education and medicine that developing countries would have otherwise not had access to. So here's what OO missed and why they lost the round. They don't explain why humans are not able to replace the AI and thus be able to co-opt the impacts that is very important. We have 4 mechanisms or 5 mechanisms as why humans are not able to replace AI, or at least in the foreseeable future. Closing.
Yeah. Same POI. Can you walk us through exactly how AI works in financial systems or works through farming?
Okay, please listen to my speech next time. I gave you like 50 examples. Here's why humans can't replace AI. Firstly, AI does very different jobs than what we did before that humans ever did. It's things like millions of transactions in stock trading. Humans never did this manually. So if you look at like things like past advancements, things like how we went from typewriters to computers or horses to cars, society had like decades to develop. Imagine if you took away cars from today's society and how devastating that would actually be. There's huge implications in a lot of industries and a variety of things and a variety of disciplines. Secondarily, look at why AI even exists. By CG's own rhetorics, AI fixes a lot of the societal issues that we have within society. It was a result of human insufficiencies. Farming AI was developed because humans were not capable of matching the demand of growing populations. It was a demand, and it was the reason why AI was developed in the first place. So this is to say, humans cannot replace it on a physical level. That's the illogical reason as to why AI even exists in the first place. Thirdly, the current workforce is not trained in a world with AI. So if you look at medicine and things like imaging, AI takes a lot of the jobs away from doctors, so young doctors are stopping to get trained things like how to actually detect imaging properly and spending more time on other things that AI can't do. So if it's the case that AI just gets removed from society, there's probably like 30-50% of doctors in society that would like cease to be able to do medical imaging. Fourthly, we just don't have the infrastructure we had before when AI didn't exist. So look at car manufacturing and how it used to involve thousands of people in machineries in factories. We don't have that anymore because AI has replaced a variety of that. And they would look at things like how machines used to handle things like imaging as well. Fifthly, very importantly at the very end of this claim, companies cannot adapt in time, and this means we're going to get a collapse of our economies. Just look at, even if companies can adapt in the short term, like a year or two, you have already lost things like investor confidence. You already destroyed the economies. You've already destroyed the lives of people when they lose their jobs. That's a point of no return that you can't get, even if you can fix these issues on closing government. The conclusion of this claim is to say you literally just get the collapse of society without AI, or at least a very significant collapse that's very, very important. The weighing mechanism panel is very, very simple. Out of every other team in this round, there's uncertainty in their impacts. OO talks about climate change. OG talks about the existential threat of AI. Those things might not happen. What we have told you today, and what's so important in this round, is the short-term detrimental impacts on the lives and livelihoods of people. That's so incredibly bad for these individuals. But importantly, when you replace AI and you take away all the memories we had with it, or you take away all the things that we discovered in the past, machine learning is the reason why self-driving cars exist. It's the reason why certain medicines exist as a result of things like artificial intelligence. But critically, AI allows for massive amounts of future iteration, so companies turn towards these things because there's potential to innovate at an extremely fast pace. That's the reason why on a short term and long term we're also able to win this debate. For all those reasons, so proud to oppose.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for the remarks. We'll on the go with to close off this debate for the government.
Hello. Okay. Great. The reason why I kept asking for specific ways to walk through how AI works in my examples is because notice what the strategy of opposition has been: to throw out random things and claim AI did them. So when I asked how exactly does AI help with financial derivatives, the answer was, well, it just does. I named it. I named financial derivatives as something AI does. Finance happens to be something I personally do research in, so this is how financial derivatives actually work. Number one, statistical methods are typically proven not to be actually effective. So if you look at the efficient market hypothesis, it's actually not that effective. But secondly, it's usually done through industry analysis. So very few of the current financial system is actually based on pure analytics. Most of it involves industry analysis. But secondly, even if we want to talk about derivatives, those are based on statistical analyzations that are not AI dependent. They're based on regular computers. The reason why derivatives and financial instruments have developed so far is not because of development of AI, but development of processing power, which is to say that computers have more processing power to do things, not in terms of the specific way that it uses AI, artificial intelligence, to do it. So the fact that none of them are able to give me a specific, the same thing with hurricanes. They just said like, oh, they're used in hurricane detection. How is it used in hurricane detection? Presumably, like currently hurricanes still exist to such an extent. They still kill everyone, kill a lot of people every day. So how does AI actually solve any of these problems? The inherent vagueness of all of opposition's content is what ultimately makes their case very weak in this round. So let's talk more specifically. The first question I want to answer is, can we sustain AI development in the status quo? And secondly, on why we ensure that AI development gets better in the long term. Let's talk about, can we sustain AI development? So the important question under here is, does AI cost us more, or does it give us more benefits in terms of innovation? What they try to claim, or the starting point we said, is we explained that AI requires massive amounts of energy. And so this speeds up the effects of climate change and it leads to all of the problems downstream. But secondly, it also creates short-term poverty. The fact that it uses up so much, if the fact that it uses up so much energy drives energy prices up, which means people can't afford them. The fact that it displaces people from their jobs, all of these are short-term problems that AI does. The only response from op is this, well, AI also creates technologies. But we can also claim that these technologies aren't dependent on AI. They were never able to structurally prove why most of these technologies are dependent on AI. So clearly, we think that AI consumes much more resources than what it actually provides in terms of benefits. But secondly, more importantly, and this is exclusively from CG, which is that AI creates, the solutions AI creates are only mitigatory. So even taking them at their examples of hurricane prevention and hurricane identification, those are mitigation. But we explain AI causes climate change, which presumably causes more hurricanes to happen in the first place. So no amount of mitigation means that, like, if hurricanes happen just more frequently, even if you can mitigate it to some extent, it doesn't actually happen. I'll take a point.
Over time, crises become exponentially worse. Why will your version of AI be able to make up for the lost 50 years?
Okay, so number one, the reason why they become exponentially worse is partly due to the current AI development, the fact that they're currently using so much more resources. But let's talk about the long term. Why do we get long-term solvency? Let's first clear up this motion thing. The motion clarification was that it's not for the foreseeable future, but that's fine. Our case deals with many, many years in the long term. Even if we have to tank like 50, even like many decades of not having AI, we're still willing to do it better because we're able to get AI far better in the long term. Here's what Jin explained to you. Why does AI get far better in the long term? And this receives zero engagement. We explained that we can develop AI better if we first develop the means of creating that energy. He talked about fusion, which, by the way, I can walk you exactly through how innovation through fusion is, which is through a combination of construction of larger power plants, through creating synthetic materials that can withstand the heat of fusion, to finding arrangements of graphite sticks that absorb. Anyways, so all of these means that you're able to create innovation, these sort of energy sources or CPU processing power that allows AI to be successful in the long term. That is why in the long term, AI development becomes far better because it doesn't need to consume as much energy because we have cleaner alternatives for these energies. It also means that the less requirements in processing power and energy means that AI is also more democratized, which means regular people can now access AI instead of only large corporations. Small businesses can also, because the less requirements in energy and computational power means that they can access AI. So all of these reasons that, number one, we beat out opposition because we explained that in the status quo, AI is not worth its development, but in the long term, we fix this problem. And secondly, we beat out OG because we explained why in the long term, we actually get the solvency that they want of preventing AI, like existential crisis. Very proud to prove it.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for their remarks. And last but not least, call off the opposition whip to close off this round of debate and close off Hart House 2025. Hear, hear.
When innovation is made, society always moves along with it. The important part of this is as society develops and as society moves along, technology becomes integrated with society. You rip off technology from the current society that exists, you create holes that cannot be filled, you create devastations that cannot be patched. Importantly, this was a material that Sam gave you that had certain impact in this round. If you rip off the Band-Aid, the wound is going to continue to bleed. It doesn't matter if this wound is going to heal to be the most beautiful force in the future. We say that we don't want that bleeding in the first place. We're going to do two things in the speech. Number one, we're going to talk about how we guarantee safety. Number two, we're going to talk about how we get better innovation. Not how we get better innovation, but how we maximize the innovation in a good way. Number one, why do we get better safety? OG is not concerned about AI. They are mostly concerned about AGI, or general intelligence with its own consciousness. As OO correctly observed, there is very, very limited mechanism and no reason that they provide as to why conscious AI is a good thing for society and something we actively want to research for and improve for. Notably, however, this observation is also meaningful for two reasons. Number one, regulations are already in place to prevent the development of AGI. Look at the fact that China already cut funding for the development of AGI within DeepSeek. Look at the fact that America is already looking at regulations against AGI and the research and development into it. AI is beautiful in that you can use it for very specific applications. AGI is not because it can take over humanity. Humanity has already decided that AGI is not beautiful, and that's an implicit reason as to why it's not likely to develop in the first place. But secondly, they explain to you that it's unlikely to be able to develop, to code protection and protection mechanisms into AI because it takes millions of amounts of code. Firstly, on intuition, cybersecurity and online finance also is something that's very important to society right now. And it also has millions and millions of lines of code keeping it safe. The online banking system, investing, cryptocurrencies all rely on millions and millions of lines of code that keep it running today. So it's unclear why something so existential as they claim, as AI's failure, is not going to be regulated to this extent. But lastly, we think that AI is going to be very targeted in its application. Companies and industries use AI and its abilities in simulation and machine learning into their specific niche. That is why militaries, as OO pointed out, is unlikely to do things like not have a cautionary thing if you're going to launch a bomb. It's why nanobots in health and detecting cancer are likely to be able to have opt-out mechanisms or eject buttons or not going into the liver and causing permanent liver failure and instead maintaining in a certain area. Failure exists, but as industries develop, we build failures and protection mechanisms against them. Go for it.
So the nuance in our case was AI was self-improving, meaning that it could eventually bypass restrictions. So you couldn't program it to gain sentience, but it would eventually bypass these things as well. And it's ridiculous myself to tell you this in off-whip.
Yeah, so that's a confusing assertion that you also make. I think I make the reasonable analysis and point out that AGI is something that we don't have, and it's not something that can magically bloom out of nowhere. It's fed data, it's built off of data, we control which data goes into it. Notably, it processes that data, it doesn't develop and build conscience and morality based on that data. Whatever. Secondly, let's talk about technology. This is where Sam's case is completely winning in this round and no one ever talks about it. The bigger thing that is unsafe than maybe potential nebulous existential risk is going to be financial markets that crash. It's going to be medicine and doctors that rely on AI now that aren't getting the stuff that they need. Here's a very simple intuition pump. When COVID vaccine was developed, they used AI to create simulations to see virus spreading. If you relied on trials and the traditional way of doing it, the COVID vaccines that came out would have been delayed 2 to 3 years, and that's millions of people dying, billions of dollars lost in the economy. So when they say they don't care about time frame and CG is willing to bypass 50 years, we say 50 years maybe of COVID being still pervasive in society. The fact that we're able to weaponize things like machine learning, which by the way is a unique subset mechanism that OO doesn't talk about, is why we can get the innovation that we want, is why we can get the change that we want. You rip that out, you rip thousands of vaccines from being made, self-driving cars from the machine learning and innovation that they need. That's the important part of this round. We have certain harms that society is doomed if you take this pill and rip out AI. But secondly, on energy usage and innovation, this is where CG falls out of this round. I know they say that, look, the foreseeable future is only 50 years. Not foreseeable future, I can see pretty far past 50 years. I can also see 2 centuries into the future, and I can comprehend that. So it's unclear why their case is A, unique, absent of that observation. B, even if their entire case is contingent on it anyways, it's unfortunate that they had to fall out of the round in this way. Lastly, on OG, they say art and innovation. Number 1, human connection is still valuable to art. This is why you go to concerts even though Taylor Swift songs are online. But secondly, human stories are meaningful in and of itself. This is why the meaning behind songs is often more important than the songs itself, and that's why you still get innovation. Lastly, on energy usage, we want to point out that A, not only is significant amounts of the energy grid right now, which is where you distribute energy and AI approximating instead of predisposed code, which makes it, by the way, more efficient, is a good thing. But secondly, the fact that you rip it out, the fact that when you take Sam's certain impacts and you rip it out, it's even more nebulously damaging for energy around the world and climate around the world. It's on that basis I'm incredibly proud to finish this round.
Brilliant. I thank the speaker for the remarks. I thank everyone for an excellent round of debate.